Titin, the largest protein in the human body and why almost zero doctors know about it. This is insane, you guys. So the Titin protein, it is the largest protein that we've discovered in the human body so far. And it was discovered before I was born. So I'm 42 years old. The Titin protein, per a lot of literature, was discovered in about 1979. So somewhere around then. Could have been discovered long before then, who knows? But the documentation of when the Titin protein was discovered, per a lot of literature, in the most recent literature that's included in this class, says it was discovered in the late 1970s. As a doctor of physical therapy, or athletic trainer, or osteopath, or chiropractor, or whatever, all of us are taught the same thing about muscles in school. We are all taught the same thing about muscles 20 years ago. We're taught the same thing today. And a huge percentage of it is just wrong. And the stuff that's not wrong is just lacking a huge percentage of the rest of the actual information that makes up the whole. So when you get people in mainstream medicine telling you things like about muscles, like, oh man, muscles work this way. This is what you need to do to fix muscles or to do whatever with muscles. All of these people that are saying that, I'm not saying that they're wrong, but they're all basing their comments or their assumed knowledge off of, at best, a 66% understanding of how sarcomeres and muscle contraction work. So we're all taught that there's two proteins in sarcomeres, actin and myosin. There's tons and tons of proteins in sarcomeres. So number one, there's way more than two. The two that we are taught about are actin and myosin. And then one of the other things that we're taught about in school, and it's the same thing as taught today in 2025, it'll still be taught in 2045, unfortunately, is that we have no idea why eccentric muscle contraction is stronger, right? So if we're talking about the bicep, as you're lengthening your bicep muscle, as the muscle's getting longer and contracting, you can lower way more weight than you can bicep curl up. Anybody who's played sports or done a lot of exercise or anything intuitively knows this. In school, we're still taught that, yeah, we don't know why. Eccentric force is much stronger than concentric. We just don't know why. That's a bunch of bullshit, you guys. We do know why. As far as we can tell, at least with our electron microscopy and other types of imaging and stuff like that, as far as we can see, it is the Titin protein. So we do know why eccentric muscle contraction is stronger. At least we think we know. It's the Titin protein. So this is correct. Why aren't we taught this? That is a massively important aspect or fact about muscles. And not only is the Titin protein responsible for increasing the force of eccentric muscle contraction, because it's such a big protein, it plays a huge role in muscle metabolism, overall metabolism, mitochondrial health, all this other stuff. So it's a super duper important protein. It's very, very useful to know about. It's the reason that eccentric muscle contraction is stronger. And it's not taught in any medical school anywhere today in 2025. It's insane. So I'll teach you about it. This is really cool stuff, you guys. This is the sliding filament theory, right? So in general, you guys, and there's lots of other stuff that happens, but just to go back to neurophysiology class, in general, what we're all taught in school, I graduated from with my doctor of physical therapy degree in 2015. This stuff was taught to me in 8th grade. It was taught to me when I was getting my doctorate degree, and it's taught to students 10 years later in 2025, right? And unfortunately, all this stuff will be taught the same way in another 30 years. It takes about 20 to 30 years at minimum for medical school curriculum to change. And the primary reason is, you guys, nobody that's in charge of operating these medical schools or pharmaceutical companies or mainstream medicine, improving people's health is not part of the equation. Making money is. So they don't really care if they teach updated new stuff. As long as the stuff that they're teaching is making them money, that's what the system wants, right? So you got to take it upon yourself to look for people that have taught themselves this stuff, like me or other people, to get a better understanding and a more complete grasp of what's going on in the human body. Okay, so actin and myosin, we're all taught that they overlap. And this is, as far as we understand, all this stuff is more or less true, you guys, right? So actin and myosin overlap when you're doing concentric contraction. So when if we're talking about my left bicep here, when you're shortening the muscle, the actin and myosin overlap. When I'm doing eccentric contraction, the actin and myosin unlap, or they lengthen, right? So that is in general how we are all taught that the actin and myosin are working. And then there's a bunch of things that need to happen for muscle contraction, but just a quick brief rundown, you guys. So in general, acetylcholine needs to go from presynaptic cleft to postsynaptic cleft. That starts the sodium-potassium pump. That depolarizes the sarcomere. Inside the muscle cell, calcium gets released from the sarcoplasmic reticulum. That binds to troponin C inside the cell. That moves tropomyosin out of the way. Then the actin and myosin can latch onto each other, cross-bridge formation, and then they can actually contract, right? So they can overlap. For normal muscle relaxation, what needs to happen is acetylcholine esterase, right? So a little protein enzyme goes in, gobbles up the acetylcholine. That reverses the sodium-potassium pump. Calcium decouples from troponin inside the cell. Tropomyosin comes back in, blocks the cross-bridge site, and then actin and myosin decouple, and then they can relax. That's what we're all taught. So just a couple of other things about this, you guys. In general, one very, very important aspect to remember about what I just told you is that with chronic sympathetic autonomic nervous system hyperactivity, which 90% of the United States population is living with, according to the CDC. So the CDC is wrong about just about everything, but on this one, they're actually right. So about 90% of the population is living with chronic metabolic dysfunction or chronic sympathetic hyperactivity. What happens in neurophysiology when that happens is you get too much acetylcholine released. Your body stops producing acetylcholine esterase, or you don't have enough acetylcholine esterase. You get way too much calcium pumped out inside your cells. And then you get not only an electric, like the muscle spasms and cramps that people feel, that's an electric contraction of the muscle. You get that combined with a chemical shortening of the muscle. So the whole epimysium, or the muscle lining. So if you think about a sausage, you guys, the casing of the sausage would be the epimysium, or the muscle lining. Typically, only the little ends, the twisted part of the sausage casing or the muscle, are receptive to acetylcholine. When the sympathetic autonomic nervous system becomes hyperactive for too long and you get too much acetylcholine, too little acetylcholine esterase, the whole sausage casing or the whole muscle lining becomes receptive to acetylcholine, and that leads to all sorts of contractile problems, muscle shortening, hypoxia, Titin dysfunction, and all that stuff. So that's just really quick in general. Basically, any doctor that remembers this stuff from school, that is what they were taught. That's what they understand about muscles. So again, as far as we know, you guys, most of that is more or less, at least on a very general, infantile, like base level, that's correct. We just don't know most of what's going on in the human body. Number one, we just don't have the ability the equipment or technology to even look at it. We don't understand most of the physics of what's going on inside the body. But we do understand a couple things, you guys. So we do think we understand that. So that is regular sliding filament theory. This is a way better name, you guys, the winding filament theory. So that sounds way cooler. So we're going to go with that. Winding filament theory. It's in the literature. And this is a much, much more accurate representation of what's going on inside the muscle. So number one, the sliding filament theory doesn't include Titin at all. So the winding filament theory with fancy imaging, electron microscopy, and other stuff, you guys, where we can actually see on this level, like the little actin and myosin proteins and stuff like that, what they're doing, the little arms of them that are coming off and stuff like that. So if the top finger is an actin and my second finger is a myosin, you guys, and they're like that, they would really be coming like this, right, when they're overlapping. But just assume actin, myosin. The Titin protein, as far as what people think or what we can see on imaging, what makes sense is that what we can see happening is as you get an eccentric contraction, or as the actin and myosin fibers are lengthening or separating from each other, the Titin protein actually wraps around the actin and the myosin proteins and provides like an extra bit of mechanical friction in eccentric contraction. And the Titin protein itself is like a springy protein. So the Titin protein during eccentric contraction provides like internal integrity to the sarcomere. It provides extra friction to the actin and myosin, and whatever else it's doing, that is the most obvious explanation that we have right now for why eccentric muscle contraction is stronger. I'm sure there's other things that go into it, but that visibly we can see this happening. So that seems to be undisputable, at least that Titin is if not the number one cause that eccentric muscle contraction is stronger. It's the number one, it's thought to be the cause of eccentric muscle contraction being stronger. I'm sure there's other things, you guys, but at least as far as we know right now, that is what's going on more or less. There's lots of other things that are going on in there, but that's what we can see more or less.